this is going to sound racist, and there's no way of saying it.
I've got my racism helmet on, so go for it. All right, welcome back to another action-packed episode of Logic Guy After Dark with me, Logic Guy. This is the show where I chat with my friends and or enemies. I'll let them self-identify. And my frenemy today is longtime mutual Twitter personality, Mr. Losar at Dialogue Always. How the heck are you?
Hi, how's everybody doing who's watching it? Losar1, probably if you haven't blocked me on Twitter, you find me funny, or you just kind of like being annoyed.
This is a notification for all of you who might have forgotten to block me on twitter.com. You can go to my page and block me there. So we're here to talk about probably our differences of opinion. Maybe not. Maybe we'll agree. But critical race theory, CRT, cathode ray tube. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Now, in preparation for this, I did some reading. Actually, I went to a site called New Discourses and read an article by Dr. James Lindsay that was titled "Critical Race Theory is Why the Crops Failed." And in that article, Dr. Lindsay argues that only by finding the critical race theorist who cast the spell and throwing stones at her until death can we rid ourselves of this long winter. Anything that you disagree with there?
Pretty much the whole opening the door of James Lindsay is an interesting start. I said
it was going to be action packed.
No. I can only really start with one thing about James Lindsay. He is very accurate in determining that there is a enormous subset of people who are trying to use critical race theory or race in general as a bludgeon to be able to gain a foothold themselves. It's kind of the same as trying to see if I can say this in a proper way. It's kind of the same as, do you remember, this had to be about 15, 20 years ago. There was a guy that used his medical profession to release a bunch of self-help books that...
Oh, wait, Jordan Peterson. Yeah, I've heard of that guy.
No, but this was long before him. It was a bunch of self-help books where they were talking about different...
I'm only 14 years old, so I wouldn't remember 15, 20 years ago.
Okay. Well, maybe if you'll find out about it. But he started releasing a bunch of self-help books where he was claiming that different ways of doing your diet would cure cancer and heart disease and syphilis and all this, like, just crazy predictions. And a bunch of people followed his stuff, and it led to quite a few deaths. And there are people that have taken the classes, have understood to an extent what critical race theory meant, and what they're doing is they're taking the information from critical race theory and they're trying to bring it into the real world while still using the terminology and adding their own little bit of
okay. I know the type of people you're talking about. I know who you're referring to, but let's not get into them just yet, because let's lay it out first. Like, what is critical race theory?
Okay, so on its face, all critical race theory is examining how race or racial decisions in the United States have affected the growth and development of the people, both advantaged and disadvantaged by those decisions over time.
So isn't that just sociology, though? Like, what makes it a distinct study?
Well, it's because it's focused primarily on race in a certain area. So that's why they were there.
Okay.
It's a part of sociology, but it's more like a concentration than anything else. It's more focused on, okay, how did race affect the decisions here, and how did it gain for some, and how did it fail for, or how did it hurt others? So it's not exactly the same as saying like overall, let's all factor in every single condition and maybe lead to a conclusion, which is what sociology is. It specifically focuses on race. It's hyper focused on race. And
Okay.
so that's
all, okay, well, go on.
That's all what it is on its face. That's about it.
So truthfully, I haven't read a ton of theory. The only like theory wise I've really read is and I read it a while back, is I read some of Kimberly Crenshaw's like early essays, the maps of mapping marginalness or something like that. And like she's considered she coined the term intersectionality and defined it in an early essay. It's actually like a legal, like academic paper that she wrote, and and her, like what she was like, she described intersectionality as having grown out of critical race theory, as like an extension of critical race theory. And truthfully, like I haven't read them recently, but I don't remember reading too much in her essays that I really found objectionable. Like a lot of it was about, and I know something people criticize about her is this like very like left-wing tendency to view history in terms of power dynamics, and a lot of people, especially a lot of conservatives, really don't like that. I personally don't have a problem with it. I didn't find too much to object to, but at the same time, if you'd asked me about intersectionality, I would say that I'm like very much against it.
And definitely, that's genuinely because there's critical race theory, the classroom, the classes, the studies, the just kind of bouncing back and forth conclusive evidence to make general arguments that are supposed to stay inside of academia. And then there's critical race theory. Let me try to explain this to everyone else. And unfortunately, the terminology,
the critical race theory in the sheets and the critical race theory in the streets, that's the dichotomy here.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, the problem is, the huge problem is when you're trying to explain critical race theory to the rest of the world.
Brian Edward at a sane skeptic on Twitter, that guy. Yep. When you're trying to explain it to the whitest guy from Minnesota, and that's saying something, then you run into some problems.
Well, and I wouldn't use him, because unfortunately, the more and more I speak to him, the more I'm starting to figure out that he has already created an idea of what critical race theory is, and you're going to have to break down his idea to help him understand what it actually is. So I wouldn't say he is like a regular person, because a regular person has no idea. So he'll walk into it going, okay, now explain to me what this is. And as you're explaining, he can open his mind up to other questions. But when you have somebody that's already been, I wouldn't say infiltrated, but kind of
indoctrinated.
I wouldn't even say indoctrinated, just the people like James Lindsay and Carlin Bohr, I can't remember her last name.
Yep.
Have gotten to him.
It's pronounced Claire-Lynn Blair Lynch Sinclair. That's how it's pronounced.
All right. Well, that pronunciation. when those two,
I've got it right in front of me. I'm looking at it. I've got the pronunciation key. That is a fact. You can put that on Wikipedia.com. Claire-Lynn Blair Lynch Sinclair.
So, I'm gonna mess that up. So I'm just gonna say Carlin. When those two get to him first, they come in with every single negative example of somebody trying to use it possible and destroy any chance of, hey, no, this is the actual study, and that is a manipulation of it. And I mean, it's just about as bad as looking at certain people who have child psychology degrees but end up making books about how beating your kids are good. You know, they have all the credentials behind them to make them seem like they're an authority in the subject, but at the end of the day, they're pushing nonsense for their own personal gain. A good example.
I don't want to derail things, but I do have another Clairlyn joke.
Okay.
Her name is Carolyn, and she demands to speak to the manager. It works better in type because you can see the Y because she spells it with a Y, and then you spell manager with the Y, and it's brilliant. It kills. But anyways, what you were going on? You were about to make a smart guy point that I derailed.
Oh no. Where was I going? So what? Oh wow, I think I just lost where I was going.
Yeah, that's what happens when you derail the conversation with your Carolyn joke.
No, you're good. Again, and this is me kind of winging it. I was supposed to get enough research to come in, and it's been a busy day. It's been a really busy day.
If you've ever listened to Logic Guy After Dark before, you would know that this is not a place for research. We don't encourage that here. This is an off the cuff, bants driven, like very like sociable deal where it's just about the back and forth.
Okay.
If you don't remember the point you were going to make, I can just like ask some questions and maybe we'll discover it if that's okay with you.
Shoot.
So what you're describing as critical race theory, it's a discipline. It's not at all. There's nothing prescriptive about it. Would you say that there are any like critical race theory like teachings or beliefs or anything like that? Does anything follow from it?
Not exactly. There isn't exactly something in critical race theory where, I mean, there are things where you can basically look at it and say, okay, you can see the framework, you can see how it moves. If you step outside the framework, and obviously you're gonna be wrong. like racism happened in America. Obviously, that's there. But once you start getting into examining the data and making conclusions, it's kind of more open to interpretation and criticism.
All right, let me ask like this. What have you learned from studying critical race theory, and how has it like helped you understand something or the world around you or history or whatever, or yourself, whatever?
Well, let's do it with an example. So
yeah,
let's try black crime rates. So one of the best examples.
1350. I know all about them. I have my tactical black crime stats binder open in front of me. Let's go.
Awesome. So the best way of looking at something like, okay, why does the black community have such high crime rate? Critical race theory would look at it and go, okay, well, what are some of the things that first would increase crime? Some things that are that almost in every situation you'll see an increase in crime over the overall population. Poverty is obviously one. Population density, psychological disenfranchisement, and undiagnosed mental health. So you look at each one of those and you go, okay, there's an increase in almost all four of them. So what would be the biggest group in each one? Well, biggest in poverty would be whites, but arguably blacks are right there with them. Like overall,
it depends. It depends if we're talking about like percentage wise or just raw numbers. Because if we're just talking raw numbers, whites are probably going to own every single one of these.
Yes, but if we're talking about per capita, then you start looking up and going, okay, so per capita, blacks have a higher rate of poverty. So how are they impoverished? Okay, well, if you look at how race has worked in the United States, obviously, if you cut off 75 to 80% of the land up until the 4 years after the last state was ratified, you're going to have an issue trying to gain money, especially if one of the biggest factors of income growth in the United States is real estate.
Wait, hold on. I think I missed a trick. If you cut off 75% of the land, that's where I kind of got lost.
So if you look at how historically racism has worked, there's been overt racism, which is obviously Jim Crow laws, where obviously there's certain places you cannot live, there's certain places you cannot buy land. Then there are obviously how redlining works.
You're talking about how like historically Black people were kept out of like land and home ownership.
Yes, and it's
Got it.
land.
Okay, I for some reason I missed that when you were explaining it, but I got it.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm just explaining how things that could link
Yep.
to generational poverty.
Yeah, and so like Jim Crow laws, redlining, which was basically like economic like Jim Crow, like bankers would deny Black families loans where in the same circumstance they would give loans to white families.
And I want to be very careful here because I know there's a hole always in the redlining argument that is rebutted with, well, redlining also worked against many white communities.
I think Candace Owens brought up this argument when she was on the Tim Dillon show, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. I want to be very specific in saying that redlining didn't just affect Blacks, but it affected Black people at a higher rate because Black people were in the areas that were devalued. So if you're in an area that's devalued and that area is redlined and you're the majority of the population in that area, you're going to be affected by it, even if it doesn't say, hey, you're Black, this is why we're doing this to you.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, Hawaii was ratified in 1959, which means the frontier of the United States.
I would not have known that, obviously, by the way. I would have had to look that up, but okay.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to trust you on this one. 1959, okay. I'm not Wikipediaing this right now.
Obviously, the CRA didn't even start until 1963.
I don't know what the CRA is.
Civil Rights Amendment.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry.
Didn't even start until 1963. There were considerations long before, but the really heavy meat of the CRA didn't start until 1963.
Yeah. There were earlier civil rights acts, but like the big one that when people say the Civil Rights Act, they usually mean is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is,
that's the really meaty one.
To even get the conversation started was 1963, like for the big one, for land ownership and stuff like that. So, since that door didn't even open until 4 years after the last state was ratified, the idea of a frontier was gone. Now, one of the biggest showings of how many Americans were able to gain a foothold into the United States was having land, being able to have that land valued above what it was when you bought it, selling that land and moving on and moving on and moving on. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that starting point until after the last state was ratified, obviously you're not going to be able to have the land. It also limits you from being able to have access to natural resources. So if you have no access to natural resources, and if you can look at some of the richest Blacks in the world, LeBron James, Oprah Winfrey, the guy that used to own BET, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I don't know.
Even all of their billions together cannot buy enough natural resources in order to gain a major foothold into the political, social, and financial processes of the United States. So, and that's because the United States has already been able to distribute out to multiple people, either through government action or by private action, almost all of the natural resources that are not already government owned.
Okay, so this is a critical race theory analysis here that you're laying down for. You're looking at systemic causes of racial disparities.
Yes.
Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I know this. I know this is long, but I have a conclusion.
Please go for it. My job is just to kind of summarize things for like the dumb shit audience that's listening to this, because they fucking need everything laid out for them. So,
so when you look at it in a sense of like, okay, so African Americans were allowed to compete in 1964, between 1964 and I'd say 1970, depending on how you look at the CRA and how they're enforced, and obviously, or not obviously, but just all the other variables to it. That means Black people had between 1970 and obviously and today to be able to obtain not only enough land to be able to get a rational foothold into the United States, but to also be able to pay off that land and profit from that land. If you also look at the graph of property values during that same period, it's exponentially higher in almost every single area that's not either underdeveloped or already redlined. So while Black people, the ones that were even able to obtain homes, because I haven't even brought in the ones that were placed under government assistance or renting, the ones that have their homes, the home has been extremely devalued over time, while the surrounding area rose in value 2, 3, 4 times its original price. So it contracts and leaves a bunch of African Americans into one area that's disenfranchised, overly populated, impoverished, and because there are zero social programs until very recently that even tried to understand mental health past the Arkham type of insane, there's a flow in those communities of negative interactions. And so because you have so many negative interactions, you have more crime, you have more violence, you have more gang activity, and you see what I'm saying? Or does that?
I do.
So
I do see what you're saying.
That's how critical race theory would look. Well, that's a way of examining it through critical race theory. How did racism work to lead to impoverished, overly populated, psychologically disenfranchised areas that have zero or very little to no focus on mental health?
Okay. Now I want to ask a question about something you mentioned, and this is actually something that came up between an argument between you and Brian, not a normal guy, Edward, who I don't know what we. It's probably kind of rude that we're talking about him so much when he's not here. I will, of course. I've been on Brian's podcast. I will, of course, invite him on here. I disagree with Brian about a lot, but I like him. I think he's like a nice guy who I enjoy talking to. But anyways, Brian, not a normal guy, Edward, you and him were talking, and a big part of your disagreement was between what you called systemic, Brian conflating two different things: systemic racism and overt racism. What's the difference between those two things?
Okay, so overt racism is obvious racism. Overt racism is burning cross,
the KKK, yeah,
the KKK, or even, I mean, it can still be overt in the sense of like somebody not understanding something, so they make decisions based on that misunderstanding, but it still would be considered like, you can kind of detect it, you can easily nullify it. That is the easy form of racism. Systemic racism is the long.
That's conservatives' favorite type of racism, because like they can identify it and they're like, there it is. That's it. I can find it. It's like playing Where's Waldo on easy mode. You know, like there you go. That's it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's fun to fight that racism because every aspect of it makes you feel better. Which and that ties into something else that I talked to you about earlier, which I want, when that door opens, I can be able to talk to you about it. So it's the easy racism. It's the one that makes you feel good. It's the one that you could turn around and say, this is why we're not like the past, because this person said X and we immediately shot this person down, or we immediately fired this guy.
It's the difference. It's the difference between like Jim Crow laws at the polls, and then like just Kentucky closing down 90% of their polling places. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Right, cool.
And then you have systemic racism, which one is factored into that long explanation of how like real estate will work to harm the Black community or something like that. But it's also based in certain biases that come automatically because of the situation that African Americans and other races, or have other biases too, but African Americans are in. So Blacks have a higher crime rate, so it makes more sense to focus or double our efforts to arrest and prosecute Black offenders, which leads us to start being more comfortable with doubling down on violations of human rights in the Black community, with the idea of we're helping to fix this. So that would be an example of how, one, systemic racism exists, and two, how it's propagated throughout a country.
Systemic racism is it's the unpopular racism, because you don't feel good when you fight systemic racism, because a lot of times you got to sort of you got to kind of look inward a little bit. You got to look at the things you take it for granted. You got to kind of challenge your preconceptions.
Yeah, it's long, it's messy, and at the end of the day, you might not look like you got anything done. You don't have that big feeling of, woo, I just defeated racism. You have that feeling of, I might have lost money myself, or I might have lost time. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask if is that like academic language? Did you get that you are drawing?
No. That was me trying to dumb it down.
Because the thing that confused me about the terminology is that like aren't antonyms, you know? So like I was pretty sure I knew what systemic racism was, and I, like you've been explaining, and like that's how more or less how I understood it. But like systemic racism can be both overt and subtle.
Systemic racism would be, you're black, you're a criminal. I'm going to use very selective information to justify my idea that you're a criminal, so I will treat you like a criminal.
But systemic racism can be subtle too, right? Though, like that's the hang up that kind of gets me. Right. So like there's an overlap between overt racism and systemic racism, right?
Yes.
Like if we're drawing the Venn diagrams, and then we could have subtle racism. So what I've created in my head is the political compass grid, but for racism. Got it? Did you see it? Did you see it in your head?
Yeah, that can work. I would do more. I can't remember what it's called, but you know the circle graphs where the circle is interlocked.
Venn diagrams.
Yeah, but I mean, oh yeah. I don't know why I got a little.
Don't worry about it, man. Don't worry, dude. That is like not in the top 1,000 fuck ups that people have said on this show. Do not worry about that at all.
But yeah, no, that's perfect.
One of like the frustrations I've had with discussing racism with right-wing conservative alt-right Republicans like Brian Edward is that's a joke. That's a joke, by the way. Edit that out later. One of the frustrations I've had is that it's not just that Republicans prefer talking about overt racism. It's that it's the only kind of racism or bigotry that they can actually wrap their heads around. The other kinds of racism, that's something else that we don't need to worry about. That doesn't count, basically, unless they're like they've got the white hood on. That's not racism in a lot of their minds.
Well, and that's kind of how a lot of things work with them. I mean, I don't want to get too far off the topic, but I mean, think about trying to explain something like global warming or mental health, or the conversation right now about transgender, and trying to explain past what immediately is in front of you to a conservative is incredibly difficult.
Do you think that's because that's because they innately think in terms of individuals and not systems?
No, because they do think in systems. Because a conservative will definitely tell you about Christianity and how Christianity works with with a systemic viewpoint of Christianity, to the idea of a very long roundabout way of trying to explain something that is vaguely written in the Bible. So,
That's true.
They have an ability to see systemic ideas. It's just very difficult to get it here, because unfortunately,
but it's not the typical lens that they approach politics through, though, because conservatism is by definition like an individualistic like ethos.
I disagree.
Really? Okay.
I think it believes it has the idea of an individualistic lens, but every time it is in power, it becomes an incredibly socially oriented system.
That's true.
If you look at, and then again, I have to keep pointing at how Christianity works in conservative community. If you've ever lived in a very heavy conservative area, there's a shaming there that forces everybody in that area to live a certain way, or they become ostracized. Now, granted, you're not going to see signs outside their yard going, "We hate you. You need to leave." Of course not. But certain people that don't fit the guidelines of how the community thinks you should be are immediately ostracized.
I can't say I ever have lived in a community like that, so it's sort of alien to me.
I did. It wasn't too long, but I did, and I was luckily I was also going to a church at that time, so I was able to watch that dynamic unfold. And it's not too much different from a lot of how the Black community works. That's why they're not lying when they say that the Black community has a lot of interlocking ideas with conservatives, because
right, absolutely, yeah.
The Black community is just as susceptible to that. It's difficult because with everything other than religion and a couple of other ideas, they want what's right in front of them to be the issue. If anything looks like it's 10 years down the line or 15 years down the line, or if it has a time constraint, or if it has more nuance to it than they really want to get into, that's where you start.
I actually feel like conservatives' short-sightedness goes in the other direction. It's not an inability to look forward. It's like an unwillingness to look back at the historic causes behind something and just be like, like their view of civil rights and like racism. Like, oh well, in 1964 they made segregation illegal. So there you go. We fixed it. It's solved.
Yeah, but and what I mean is, because they look at the legislation, they won't look at what decisions were made directly after that. Well, here's a good way of looking at it. So if you ever got into a conversation with a conservative and talked about violence, they go to lynching. They are very quick to explain to you that there are only about a couple thousand lynches in the United States total. What they won't get into is the reason why lynchings happened. And the reason why was not because, oh, we don't like this person, we're going to hang them. Ha ha ha, we hate Black people. It was a showing to that community of, if you get out of line, this is what will happen to you. Or it's time for you guys to go.
Right.
Which is why, if you look at the Great Migration, a lot of the people that moved up north into these big cities were, one, looking for economic reasons, but two, a lot of these cities had one lynching or one event that basically said, we're on our last leg with you. There's a very good chance tomorrow you might wake up to a cross burning in your yard. The end of the week, you might wake up to people kicking in your door. Make a decision before we make a decision for you. And it's hard to explain that to a conservative, because a conservative only really sees the lynching in itself.
Yeah, that sort of does summarize like some of the frustration I've had with them. I was discussing racism with some right wingers recently. I had a huge argument, and the way they approached it was just they began by assessing the person's intentions first, and like, oh well, this woman's not racist, and then followed from that, therefore, because she's not racist, the things she did, therefore, were not racist. So no problem. Whereas to me, that's backwards. What I look at is, because I have a very finite ability to assess someone's intentions. I do think that people's intentions matter. That's sort of been like a hot topic lately. I wouldn't disregard intentions. It's just that I have a finite ability to judge them, whereas I have a much greater ability to look at the actual facts of the case and form a conclusion based on that. But they don't see it that way.
Well, my gauge is to point out where the negative is. So instead of, this person is racist, this person has a racist intention, that way this person does a racist act, my idea is, this person does a racist act, the intention really doesn't matter. because unfortunately, whatever you reasoned for the reason why you're doing it doesn't change the fact that the act itself is something that should be focused on.
And this ties directly into some like current events that I'm not sure I do want to talk about, but I'm not sure if I want to get into them right now. But like when you say that like intention doesn't matter, like you know that the story I'm talking about that like relates to directly, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the New York Times.
Yes, and do you want me to give a short summary of it?
Yes, please do.
Okay,
no, please.
So basically, Smith's College had an event.
No. That's not the one I was talking about. I was talking about the departure of what's the guy's name? Donald McNeil from the New York Times. Do you know the story I'm talking about?
No, I don't. Not that one.
Oh, okay, all right. So we don't have to talk about it because you're not aware of it, but I'll just give you a quick overview. So the New York Times had a very prominent, award-winning COVID reporter. He was like the top COVID reporter in the nation, and they fired him recently due to, of all things, his conduct on a high schoolers field trip 2 years ago. I know that sounds totally bizarre, but it was about that. And in the course of him chaperoning a high school field trip, he dropped an N-bomb. So here's what was happening. Becky was arguing with Vicky and about a girl who got expelled for saying the N-word. And apparently they inquired about Donald McNeil's opinion on this, and he wanted to know what the context of using the N-word was. But he didn't say the N-word. He said the N-word, if you follow my meaning.
Okay, yeah. I get what you're talking about. Go ahead, though.
Yes. Okay. So flash forward 2 years later, and this story, which they had already done like an internal like matter on this, resurfaces, and it resurfaces in a very public way, largely in part due to some like expose that the Daily Beast ran. And very promptly as a result of this, New York Times, I got to be careful here. New York Times did not technically fire him, but there were internal disciplinary actions, including they were going to move him to a different section, a less prominent section of the paper. And they said there was going to be some HR investigation as well. Or they offered him a severance package, and he took the severance package. So 2 years later, he departs the New York Times mostly as a result of this. I mean, there could have been other things, as other things were referenced. But in their statement, the New York Times said something very particular. They said the intention behind the word didn't matter. They said this, and this caused a brouhaha in part because, as people pointed out, this is inconsistent with the New York Times' own policy, which has actually printed out the N-word in relatively recent stories. There was one from, I think, just a few months ago. So this standard that they were applying to Donald McNeil was not even their own editorial standard, and they ended up walking the whole thing back and saying, okay, no, intention, like after the guy was already out the door, they said, oh no, our bad, intention actually does matter. That's the story that my brain went to.
Yeah. And I'm not going to defend the New York Times because they're absolutely wrong. But in the arguments of the N-word, there are two forms. Now, this is not study. This is not critical race theory. This is just how it's expressed. There are two versions of the N-word. There's the N-word ER, and there's the N-word A or AH, or depending on where you're ER is the obvious N-word. There's no working around it. It's one thing. It means, I mean, obviously, there's no real need to go into why or what it means. I would say not. Yeah. A is a bit different. A is used either positively or negatively as a way for blacks to either say to each other, hey, even though they see us as an N-word, you are being successful in life, and that's the positive way of saying it, or this is why they call us the N-word, and that's the negative way of looking. So if you look at rap songs or everything else, and you hear somebody say this,
wait. Just sorry to interrupt, but when the young man spilled beans over himself during a showing of Cars 2, which was that?
yeah. He would be using it in the negative connotation, and basically
he's saying this is why they call us N-words. That's what he's saying.
This is why they call us N-words. You are in a movie theater with beans. Like, this is why they want to separate themselves from us. This is why they got us sectioned off in a certain corner. They don't want nothing to do with us because you over here eating beans in a movie theater. Like that is
spilling them all over yourself.
Yeah,
it's such a good tweet. Good tweet. Oh my god.
It's a funny way of looking at it, but it is you can explain it that way of like, this is why basically though this is why we can't have nice things for black people. So when a white person says it, and I want to be very clear, this is the reason why there's backlash to it, but I'm not too supportive on this. So when a white person says it, when they say ER, obviously we know what ER is, but when they say A, either positive or negative, they're confirming we see you this way.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people look up and go, you really can't use that word because there isn't a way of saying it without being offensive. Because you are.
Yeah, I think most people understand that. So wait, I'm a little unclear on what you were saying though. You're saying that you would say that white people shouldn't use the soft R, right?
I'm just explaining why the A would be seen negatively if a white person says it, and we all know why the R is said if
I mean, the way I think of it is like it's just like the soft R or the A or whatever you want to say it is it's like a very obvious case of reclaiming a slur, and obviously white people can't reclaim a slur for black people. It's just pretty like self-explanatory that way.
Yeah, and I was just explaining what the reclaiming was.
No, right? Yeah, no, yeah, I got that. I got that. Yeah, okay. I was just the way you worded it was a little confusing to me. What, out of curiosity, what do you think of like the situation where a white guy uses the term not directed at someone, but the way he used it, I guess. I don't know how to describe that.
How old were the kids around him?
It was like a summer thing, so they were different ages, but I think they skewed towards like 17. The New York Times actually interviewed some of them in a follow-up piece, and the main girl they talked to was 17 at the time.
Okay, so I'm guessing this is more of a, hey, these are young kids. That's why we're looking at it a bit more severely. Now I'm not in the boardroom of the New York Times, and I'm going to be honest, this does open up another door. There are a lot of corporations that are attempting to fix systemic problems by creating their own overt problems.
In my opinion, the way you just said that was too generous, but yes, I know what you mean.
So instead of, hey, your company would be better by focusing, I don't know, maybe building centers in certain communities that might benefit from having the employment of working at your jobs, while also not demanding that they never tax you, so they can also fix their roads and schools and everything else. Instead of actually taking that leap, we removed Miss Butterworth from we removed Aunt Jemima from the front of a box because
For
years
sexual
ago.
harassment. Just Aunt Jemima sexually harassed a young woman in the internship program.
Well, not just that, but like,
Yeah, I know.
but like, it was the 300th thing said by blacks years ago of like, and y'all got Aunt Jemima on a box. This lady, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, he also said Aunt Jemima. So let's look at the list.
Yeah. I don't even get the Uncle Ben one. Is Uncle Ben racist? It seems like just like a black guy to me.
They're both. It's the idea of Uncle Ben looks like the old Mamie South, of where it's like,
okay.
we're really racist against you. We really don't like you, but you're a member of the family because you're the cook. I can fire you whenever I want to. I can ruin your life whenever I want to. Don't speak back to me. You're below my kids. But you want, like, you're family. This is family, you know? And so on its face, it's kind of disingenuous.
Yeah, yeah. Is it the uncle that makes it like that? Because I never really unpacked Uncle Ben before. Like what makes it a black guy who works in the kitchen for a white guy and not just a black guy who likes rice?
Just his entire his entire appearance, how he's meant to look. Let me.
Yeah, I'm bringing him up too. It's gonna be all Spider-Man when I know it's actually not. It's actually the rice guy.
All right, so
he's got a bow tie. So immediately, the immediate giveaway is the bow tie.
Yeah, and also if you want to, and I think they did this on purpose. If you want to type in Django Steven and see how Samuel Jackson
is that with a D? Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, Samuel Jackson's character in the movie Django.
Mm-hmm. He looks as close to the Uncle Ben appearance as possible. So it's black people picking up on that to where that was the acceptable Negro of that time. We don't like being acceptable Negroes anymore. Remove it. But on the other side of that, not removing it would have not bothered a single black person if you built a Coca-Cola facility in an inner city neighborhood where people were able to work at a decent amount so they could pay off their house so they can actually start building their community.
So wait a minute. Now I'm looking at Uncle Ben and his bow tie. How do you know he's not with the Nation of Islam?
You don't. And
I'm just asking questions, man. I'm just asking questions. People are not interrogating this enough. Only on Logic Guy After Dark are you hearing the true story.
and you don't. And to be honest, the people that have an issue with it don't care. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, like the depiction's kind of it looks like the acceptable Negro. We're tired of being the acceptable Negro, but no black person, none of them, even if you can find some weird black person on Twitter talking about how Uncle Ben removed from the box saved her life or saved his life, that fool is lying. And I'm gonna open like I'm gonna set aside trying to talk about academics and everything to be incredibly honest with you. A lot of Negroes run around online saying a bunch of stuff, just seeing what sticks.
Yeah, that's Twitter. That's what people are doing on Twitter. No doubt. I don't think that's specific to the black community on Twitter. I think that's what people do on Twitter.
But unfortunately, a lot of white people don't seem to understand that with black. And I would argue that's because a lot of the more vocal, and I love leftists. I love y'all. I'm not saying you're a left. I don't know if you're a leftist or not. I'm not going to say that.
No, not really. I'm not like a Marxist, but you know, whatever. I'm probably on the line somewhere there.
People left of center.
Yep.
I love people left of center. I'm one of y'all, but sometimes think for a second before acting. So if you got a black person acting up and yelling about something that doesn't make sense, think for a second and maybe think this fool might be acting up. And
this is super controversial. I just want to say that Losar is speaking for himself and not the Logic Gang community.
Yes. No, this is me.
Yeah, I'm standing in the corner like Mike Myers in that Kanye West clip. I'm just like looking with a look of panic in my eye, hoping that the moment stops.
Well, no. This moment has to go because a lot of people need to hear this.
Sure, yeah.
there are crazy black people just like there are crazy everyone else. And sometimes and sometimes it's not even crazy. Sometimes the person is just talking just to see you react. And to be honest, if I say,
well, you're talking about trolls now, and I defend all of those people.
No. These aren't trolls.
This is a pro troll podcast. Just to remind you, sir.
It's not just trolling, because these are people that kind of huff their own farts too.
Okay.
So they're not.
Yeah.
They're not just trolling. They're BSing, realizing their BS is starting to stick, and then they're starting to smell their own BS and starting to.
I wanted to give an example of a corporation of a big corporation that wants to address individual racism while contributing to systemic racism, or without combating systemic racism. That I think is on point.
Pepsi?
Nope, not Coca-Cola, although that's a good one too. But I was going to say the New York Times, which could have, if they wanted to address racism as a result of this system, what they could have done is, instead of having staff lead a field trip of privileged prep school kids who are paying $5,500 for the privilege, what they could have done is instead do an outreach program for like disadvantaged kids who don't go to the best schools and don't have $5,500 to spend on a field trip for their college prep, for their college application.
Or neither.
Or neither, because like one of my favorite things about that story is the way like for some reason it's the plot of Bad News Bears. Like they sent some like 66-year-old reporter out with wayward youth to like spend time. Like for some reason it's this guy is like doing like Outward Bound with troubled youth. Like, what is going on at the New York Times?
Well, instead of doing back-patting nonsense at the New York Times, one good thing you can do is every once in a while, because you have a newspaper that you can set information out with, every once in a while, post the property values of many of the buildings in that community.
Wait. In which community? In the community where the New York Times offices?
No, designated black community.
Okay, all right.
Post the property values of those places and show year over year over year the devaluation. Then also compare that to certain areas that are starting to become gentrified, or compare that to certain suburbs that were overvalued for that direct reason. That way, you can give people the ability to see the line of how we got to where we are.
Think systemically, not individually. That's the message here. That's the message.
Yeah, instead of doing these huge, or these not huge, instead of doing these unnecessary feel-good stories about bringing a bunch of rich people down to black people's level to grab their hearts and go, oh, for 5 seconds and then walk away. Actually start to opening that door in a way that people understand.
Okay, now I like where we're going, but I gotta ask a pushback question here, okay? Because you've been defending critical race theory. Now, what you've been saying here, like, you've steel manned the hell out of critical race theory. Like I can't imagine very many people listening to this and having a big problem. And my thoughts are, I wish that the leading critical race theory experts in the country, promoted by TV, promoted by Coca-Cola, promoted by Hillary Clinton, I wish that they made such salient points, but they don't. They focus on the individual and not necessarily the overt, but the individual. And I think that they largely ignore the systemic.
Well, because capitalism.
See, but like, what's crazy about that coming from you is that you're not even a Marxist. Like, you've got to have the hammer and sickle in your. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
You've got to have the hammer and sickle in your display name if you're going to pull that card, because you're a capitalist. Am I wrong about that?
Yes.
Yeah, you have a background in economics, right?
I have a background in political science. But
you have a background in political science.
Sorry, I have a background in political science. But I had a concentration in economics and I changed it.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, you talk
But
about economics on Twitter a lot, and I always
yes,
value your opinion on that. You clearly have a lot of knowledge in that area, which I do not.
um, it's because capitalism, and it's because if there's a way to make something simpler, faster, and cheaper, it's always going to override something longer, more expensive, and more complicated. So if I can slap together $1,200.
I don't think that Robin. This is who we're talking about. We're talking about Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X Kendi. I don't think they're making anything simpler. For one thing, I think that the things they're saying are outright nonsense that like belongs in the garbage. Basically,
Let me be very specific.
yeah.
Places that hire them think it's simple
Yep.
because the people that they talk to, they're obviously the board of directors at Coca-Cola or the New York Times, or maybe the New York Times might be a little hard to go on to, but Coca-Cola are not going to walk in and go, okay, wow, that's a lot of information on critical race theory. Give me that. No, they're going to walk in and go, okay, who can sell me critical race theory in a 3-hour session? That way we can still get our work done.
Well, let me ask you this though: why are they hiring the Robin DiAngelos in the first place? What's the value proposition there?
She's easy,
in your opinion.
She's.
But no. But that doesn't answer the question, because the option is to just not hire a critical race theory consultant at all, right?
You have to do something to make it look like you're actually addressing the situation in the United States, because it is
right. Because here's what it is: it's actually liability protection. So, in a lot of cases, I don't know if this happened at Coca-Cola, but in a lot of cases, what happens is there will be an incident on the premises, and the corporate leaders, the C-suite people will go into a panic. They'll be like, "Oh my God, this could be a lawsuit. We could be looking at a serious lawsuit here. What can we do?" And what you do in those situations is there are companies like the ones that Robin DiAngelo worked for, and I assume she has her own company now, that sell their services, right? They will go to your corporate place and they will talk to your racist white fragility employees, and this buys you as a company liability, protection against lawsuits. That is the service that they provide. That's the product.
And to add on to that, what is easier to get that done? Would you rather hire someone who is going to speak like me?
Yes, I would. 100%. I would. And not only that, but I think it would be more effective too.
It's the effectiveness doesn't matter. Like, wait a minute, we're talking
but
about.
I said two. I said in addition to effectiveness, I also would otherwise.
I don't see it, because I would honestly give suggestions, like I said, which would be more along the lines of, well, if you really want to handle this, build a plant or a facility closer to this area, or if you really want to deal with this, instead of doing.
Okay. So these would have a price tag on. See, now that makes sense to me, because these would have a price tag on them.
And instead of that, Robin DiAngelo comes in and goes, say these words, and when you say these words,
that's true.
We'll give you a certificate saying that you've said these words, and racism is solved here. Bye bye.
That's true. You can just tell people to be less white and get the same protection. Whereas if they hired someone who actually did examine things systemically, well, I mean, systemic solutions are like expensive in more ways than one. You can't just get a certificate. They're long term. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I'll move this away from race, because it hits almost every aspect of American life. Look at our electrical grid right now. Our electrical grid has issues with.
I am looking at it.
I'm sorry, I'm saying it.
Yeah, no, I get it. Don't worry about it.
Our grid has an issue with one animal, squirrels. And I know it sounds odd to say, but it has a serious issue with squirrels. Squirrels cause
It doesn't sound odd at all. It sounds really obvious when you say it, because every time you look at an electrical wire, what's running across it? A dang squirrel.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's like somewhere as high as like 40% of our blackouts or brownouts are caused by squirrels.
Wow,
Now,
holy shit.
it only costs maybe $20-$30 to build traps along the electrical grid to be able to capture these squirrels and keep them from harming the electrical grid. But
How much does it cost just to murder the squirrels with a trap? Probably even less.
well, I
Probably
mean,
way
yeah,
less.
but running around murdering squirrels is not going to be a good image at all.
Yeah, but no. I will defend the squirrel murder because if they're gnawing on the insulator cable, then they're dead anyways. So we may as well there's no reason to be pinching. There's no reason to be breaking the bank to save these squirrels. Is what I'm saying. They're dead anyways.
Yeah, but that 6-year-old kid or that PETA representative is not going to step outside and go, "Oh yeah, okay, they're messing with the power lines. Yeah, kill that thing." They're going to step outside and go, "Look at all the dead squirrels. That is incredibly evil. That is horrible. That's disgusting." So it's an image issue.
All right.
But,
okay. All right. We'll agree to disagree. But anyways, go on.
You can make simple little traps along the electrical grid to capture squirrels to really deal with one of these issues with the blackouts along the line. But at anywhere between $10 to $30 a pop, that's millions when you get finally to the end of it. You really want to spend millions catching squirrels? Not really.
Here's what I would say. Here's what I would say to that. I would say what's the cost of 40% of our blackouts?
I'm
Probably
not
really
paying
expensive.
It. Sure, but I'm
sure
not
you
paying
are.
it.
Yeah, everyone's paying it.
And then the customers pay that. So the customers pay for the blackout when I go, "Oh no, there was a blackout. We had to repair it. We got to add repair costs. Sorry."
Don't the customers also pay for the squirrel-seeking Scud missiles that we're launching at them? or humane life-preserving traps? Either one. Like, don't the customers pay either way?
Yes, but they pay on the back side of it instead of paying on the front side of it. So we have to take the money from the customer and then distribute it to make these traps, which means by the time it gets to the stockholder, we've already removed a certain amount of money from it. Where if it's paid off on the front, end, this is just the money we have.
Okay.
You know? So, and I mean, I know we're getting off topic or anything, but it's just like that with almost anything. If I'm sitting here at Coca-Cola and I'm like, 3 hours, a seminar, 500 people, that's probably about a couple $1,000s a head. No, that's not too big of a deal. I'm Coca-Cola. A whole systemic racism course on top of starting to build facilities to even out the situation that actually addresses systemic racism in the United States, that could cost billions.
Yeah.
Give me the seminar and go home.
Yeah, but then what happens is one of your employees leaks it, and now it's this major embarrassment. And like, what's that going to cost you? Plus, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there are some lawsuits as a result of this. So I don't know, man. I think it's very, very poor thinking on their part.
Not really, because it's the same reason. Because it's still going to cost more to try to actually address the problem. I mean, a good example, Roundup. Think about it. Roundup,
the weed killer. You're talking about the weed killer.
Yeah, Monsanto knew for years what Roundup was doing to people. They knew for years, but they also knew by the time they went to court and had a class action lawsuit and had to admit wrongdoing, they could easily settle out of court for a fraction of the money they made just selling it over the course of time.
I mean, I don't know about that specific case, but I mean, lawsuits are a cost of doing business. It is baked in. So, you know, I mean, they could be playing the long game where, you know, the lawsuit for Robin DiAngelo hooking electrodes up to the skulls of all the Coca-Cola employees could, in the long term, actually end up saving them money, which is like, yeah, I mean, it's a sickening thing to think about. It's disgusting. It's
offset by the amount you make or by the amount you pay by when a race issue happens on your plant and you go, well, we already did race training, so that's his fault.
Yeah, you're protected. I gotta go off, man. I gotta say something about it's about Twitter. Surprisingly, something's bothering me on Twitter. When that Coca-Cola thing came out, which is an employee leaked some like LinkedIn training course from Robin DiAngelo that said some like dumbass shit about like how you needed to be less white and some other like race essentialism stuff. It was like some dumbass shit.
Yes.
The response I saw from so many left-wing Twitter accounts was defending Coca-Cola's honor, being like, oh, well, that's probably exaggerated or probably didn't happen. And I thought at the time, I was like, this is a bad bet here. Betting that Coca-Cola isn't actually funding this Robin DiAngelo training is a bad bet. And sure enough, a few days later, Coca-Cola releases a statement being like, oh, whoops, our bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because the left has, and I understand it, because a lot of the left had to deal with you know, the skeptics, the antis, the
Dave Rubins, the IDWs.
They became so used to these people are fighting us with lies and deception every single day.
Yeah.
It becomes natural just to look up and be like, that's not true, they're lying.
That's true. That's true. But at the same time, when it comes out a few days later that you got owned and that Coca-Cola absolutely was doing this, it's time to re-examine your priorities. It's time to look within and be like, okay, what's going on here?
That's not true, they're lying. And I know it sounds wrong to say, but that's their mindset. That's not true. That's not true. You're taking it too hard. I can't, because unfortunately, because of how social media works, admitting to the wood chip admits to the tree. So if they turn around and go, yeah, Robin DiAngelo was a little messed up here, this was wrong, absolutely wrong, you're right. That means, yes, I'm right. And all this time I've been telling you that critical race theory has been destroying the minds of our children and da-da-da-da-da. You know?
But here's why the left should be open to that case, because this garbage peddled by these corporate goons is completely antithetical to our values. At least it's completely antithetical to my values. So when you're a leftist and you're defending Coca-Cola Corporation, something's gone wrong here.
Yeah. And that's why I said earlier on, like, I love my left to center people. But every once in a while, and I you know what, I had a rant on this before on Twitter because it annoys me.
I do love a good rant. Feel you can bring it up and read it, man.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll search for it while we talk, and that'll be like my last thing I say. So I got to a point to where I'm like, look, you're doing a disservice to the people that you're claiming to defend when you don't actually take the time to understand what's happening before fighting for, quote unquote, fighting for black people. If you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't know what's going on, if you have no clue how the world pretty much works, but you feel like, oh, here we are. I found it. Performative white people that focus more on alleviating their own personal feelings of guilt than actually helping fix the issue of racial discrepancies should be too violent for Twitter until too violent for Twitter until they're too violent for Twitter.
Damn, that is a fucking rant right there.
And it was because I was so irritated. I sat and watched.
Were you subtweeting someone right there? Were you subtweeting someone right there? Be honest.
I was subtweeting an argument I saw where, and I'm not going to mention the person's name or the handle.
I'll know who it is, and I'll say their name once you describe it. Go on.
Where I genuinely watched this person trying to excuse the assaults by black people on Chinese.
Oh no! Oh no!
And they're saying like, oh well, black people have been hurt for so long that they have internalized anger, and because they're angry, it's our fault that this and this and this is happening. And I'm looking at this conversation, and I was at work too, so I had to just put it down. But
Yeah.
I looked at the conversation and I became so frustrated because I'm like, first off, I'm pretty
that
sure
is demoralizing. Stuff like that is demoralizing.
yeah. And that's why I have a hatred. Okay, let me not say hatred. I have a severe dislike for Robin DiAngelo because one, I don't even think she's serious. I don't even think she's honest. I don't. I think I think she's the Dave Rubin of the left.
Wow.
I think she is somebody that found a loophole and tried to fill Al Sharpton's shoes of being a piece of crap person that ruins the conversation for their own personal benefit. And I don't like her because of it. And she's ruining the idea of critical race theory, and she's giving credence to the nonsense that is said by people like Carlin Brasinko and James Lindsay and Brian from Mythicist. Like they're genuinely giving them power to say the nonsense that they're saying because you're actually doing it. I can guarantee you in that entire seminar for the Coca-Cola seminar, most of it was accurate. Most of it was right. Most of it was what was supposed to be said. Except for that one part where you decided to add your own ideas into it. So
yeah. Oh man. I could go on for like so much longer. We should do a part two of this some other time. But I did want to. But before we go, and this is again, it goes back to your argument with Mr. Brian Edward, who I will personally reach out to and ask him to come on the show because we just talked about him. We talked so much shit about Brian. I mean, and I know he's a good sport, and he would love to come on and give contribute to the marketplace of ideas. And I will, Brian, please come on. I will reach out to you personally. But another big part of your argument was about the term whiteness.
Yes.
And like, what is that term? What does it mean?
Well, okay, now I have to first explain the term white. Because in order to understand whiteness, you have to understand that white doesn't mean white people. It doesn't mean white person. It doesn't mean any individual or any group of people considered white. The term white is being used as an idea, and it was drawn from when the United States was trying to justify its slavery, discrimination. They created the idea of white being superior to the other groups, because if you make them inferior, or if you make them animalistic, or if you make them domesticated cattle in the eyes of people who are questionable about slavery, it's easier to be able to keep your slaves. So
it's a privileged social category, in other words.
Yes. And I'm talking about the American aspect of whiteness, or white. I understand that white has existed for a long time in various ideas, but the United States was the first place to ever weaponize it. So, when people are saying whiteness, they're talking about how that idea of what is considered appropriate is also considered white has affected the discourse and the growth and development of non-whites, and has limited the inclusion of quote-unquote non-white ideas into the marketplace.
So are you almost talking about a caste more than a race? Is it closer to the idea of a caste than a race?
It works like a caste, but it's based on race. Does that make sense?
It's based on but I think that's confusing, because if it's like I mean, it doesn't refer to white people, but it's based on race, is like that's difficult for me to wrap my head around.
And that's because it was a way of justifying. It was also a way of not a way of justifying. It was a way of preventing poor white people and poor black people from getting together and overthrowing the system as it was directly after the Revolutionary War. So if you told a bunch of
but when people say like whiteness, they're talking about divisions between working class white and non-white
No,
people?
they're talking about the idea of making certain things white, and they're talking about. I know it's a weird way of explaining it, but to make certain actions, viewpoints, ways of life white, to try to racialize action.
And white in that context, it does mean relating to white people, like, right?
It's relating, but it's relating on the side of not saying you're white, so X. It's saying white is X.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
I got as careful and scrupulous about the use of this term as they should be. Or sometimes, yeah.
Like Robin DiAngelo.
Yeah.
When you get to the point of telling people how to not going after a race, and that's why I find Robin DiAngelo. She's the Sigmund Freud of critical race theory. Does that make sense?
Well, Sigmund Freud, yeah, it does. Except that Sigmund Freud has been discredited and repudiated by the psychiatric industry for
over time.
I mean, not 100 years, but because, well, probably close to 100 years, actually. I think it began before he was dead. Like, even in his lifetime, he was not really the leading psychiatric. What makes it like that, in your opinion?
It makes it more destructive than anybody else's because it came, and I know this sounds very, very, this is going to sound racist, and there's no way of saying it.
I've got my racism helmet on, so go for it.
It's because it came from a supposed white advocate. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, white advocates get a little bit more attention than blacks do.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's not, and I'm not going to do the, oh, it's racism. I mean, it's not as much racism as it is just white advocates have the resources that a lot of blacks don't. And when you like set me up for that, I was expecting something way spicier. This is not a bad take at all, in my opinion. I think most people would agree with it. Okay, I just it's hard to explain.
I'm taking off my racism helmet. I don't think I need it for this.
I know as soon as I went towards just race in general, it's hard to not cross that line and make a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, race is a really difficult topic to talk about, which is why I fucking hate that these charlatans are out there like leading the charge, probably telling you the worst things you can do. Probably. So
do most black people that know what they're talking about. But but again.
Wait a minute, but like I gotta kind of push back on that though, because like I'm not most black people. I mean, who knows? I haven't looked at any surveys or anything, but there are a lot of leading critical race theory advocates, many of whom are black. And I know that Eric Dyson, do I have that name right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, Michael Eric Dyson. Yeah, he wrote the blurb. He wrote the introduction for Robin DiAngelo's book. There aren't leading critical race theorists calling out the charlatans. And if they're not going to do it, then like, aren't they kind of responsible? Isn't it kind of their job?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely their job, but capitalism.
So Michael Eric Dyson wrote the blurb because for like capitalistic reasons.
Now, again, I wasn't sitting in the room when it happened, but I guarantee you somewhere in there was a scratch my back, I scratch yours. Somewhere in that conversation where Michael Eric Dyson
I mean, you're right.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put my backing on this.
But when he did that though, he kind of signed a deal with the devil, and by the devil I do mean Robin DiAngelo, who is a witch.
Yes.
Like he did that at the expense of not only his credibility, but the credibility of his field
and his own people.
And I wasn't going to say that, but yeah, that too.
Well, because black people are just as susceptible to the nice. Think about it. You've seen how the skeptic community worked prior to 2016. You saw how,
specifically in regards to what?
In regards to talking about the alt-right, like they're just normal human beings that just have an idea instead of.
So by skeptic community, you're talking about Sargon of Akkad. You're not talking about Sam Harris. Like you're not talking about that skeptic community. I get it. Okay, right.
I would argue to an extent Sam Harris too, because Sam Harris now is a lot more vocal against his own IDW than he was.
But not
before.
in 2016. Yeah, not in 2016. Yeah. I didn't mean Sam Harris didn't fall into that. What I meant was that like when you said skeptic community, I was thinking of like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens in 2005, you know, but you were talking about like the YouTube anti-feminism movement of like 2014, 2015. You're talking about Sargon, you're talking about your favorite shoe on head, you're talking about Armored Skeptic, those people.
That's another conversation for another time. We got to talk about that.
That's a totally other conversation, man.
Yeah. But if you looked at them, a lot of these people did know who they were talking to.
That's true.
There's no way you didn't know what Lawrence Southern thought, or Stefan Molyneux, or what is his name? Screw it, but you know what I mean.
I think the best example is, he's not a YouTuber, but Steve Bannon was playing dumb about this term, and he was the editor-in-chief of Breitbart at the time, and he was calling Breitbart an alt-right platform. And a year later, leaked emails come out that prove conclusively Steve Bannon was friends with the leaders of the alt-right community. He knew exactly what he was promoting. He played dumb, and a lot of people fell for it.
But on the other side of that, because these people did hop on that train, they were able to get a lot of viewers that were attached to the alt-right community. One of the best examples of this, and I know we're getting later on, but one of the best examples of this is Andy Worski.
Okay. Infamous YouTuber.
Yes.
Andy Worski. Stay back, Andy Worski.
Yep. If you watched the way the Andy Worski thing went, it started with, hey, I'm with JF. I don't know. I'm on the barrier of thinking about the alt-right. You know, I'm cool with you guys, but I'm not there yet. And during that time, he was making hand over fist stupid money from super chats from these people. But that only lasts so long before they go, okay, it's been nearly a year. I've been giving you $100 a stream. Where are you at on that? And when he finally had to make the decision of saying like, oh, well, I'm not 100% with you guys, they all dropped out. His money disappeared instantly. And the same thing's happening with people like Michael Eric Dyson. I guarantee you, somewhere
that
in
is
there,
quite the comparison.
It's quite the comparison, but somewhere in there, somebody sat Michael Eric Dyson down and said, Robert DiAngelo's making a book. A lot of it's kind of weird. Doesn't matter. We just want this best-selling book to get a little bit more credibility. Sign your name on it, and we'll keep your credentials high, and we'll keep you making a little bit more money than you.
Yeah, I mean that's I guess that's probably how it went down. I just gotta say though, like back to whiteness, it's just not a good term. Like if it doesn't mean white people, like okay, Brian Edward, back to Brian, had a tweet that I agree with on this, where he said, if the term whiteness doesn't mean white people, then it's either not a good term or whiteness doesn't impart any meaning. And like I find myself agreeing with that. That's sort of my opinion on that.
And that's kind of why whiteness is not supposed to leave academia. It's not supposed to get into the mainstream, because it's a very difficult term to understand without having at least a cursory knowledge of where it originated, why it was made, who made it, what the intentions were. Like, if you don't know any of that, if I have to take you through all of that in order to even use the term, there's no point in using the term. So that's why, I mean, I'm going to still defend the usage of it, but I mean, defend the usage of it in the classroom. It should have never left the classroom.
But why do you think that the word has taken off so much? Not just with like the professional CRT people, but like it's in the media everywhere. Like Vice writes articles that are just all about like whiteness this, whiteness that. Like why do you think that the term is so popular among like the journalism class and the media class?
It's controversial. If I get you get even a hate click is a click.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's something I've been arguing for a lot too. That like a lot of these sites are just hate click driven. Yeah.
Yeah. If I write an article saying the generational disparities of East Cleveland, Ohio, shows X, Y, or Z, it's going to get overlooked by almost any hate watcher in the world because it's like, okay, he's making an actual argument, and I don't really want to pay attention to that. But if I say the whiteness of East Cleveland is hurting the black race, you're going to get 1,000 hate clicks of people that's just going to hate the type of it.
It reminds me of in our Tim Pool episode with Tim Pool clips. We watched a documentary that Tim Pool worked on. He didn't produce it, but he was like a narrator of it that he made during Ferguson. And there's a part where they're talking about. I take it you've probably read a lot about like Ferguson and the situation there, probably. Yeah. So they're talking about. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I only watched it for this episode, but I was impressed by it. And there's a part where they're talking about the way like the balkanized municipalities around Ferguson really hurt people and really target black people in particular, because you can mount up all of these like parking and speeding infractions in the different municipalities that not only do they all compound in cost, but you can be arrested for the outstanding ticket. So they turn you into like a fugitive in your own neighborhood. And they're breaking this down, and it's like so enlightening. And then they cut from that to a guy from the Mike.com who's like, the problem is whiteness and ingrained whiteness. And it's just like, no, cut that guy out. We don't need that guy. Go back to the other thing. Because the other thing was a concept that we could actually sink our teeth into and understand, and that you could explain to other people. And that also even pointed to what a solution might look like where the problem lies and what we have to address. Whereas the other is just pap. It's just a smear, and it belongs in the garbage.
Well, it belongs in the garbage, but it also belongs in the usage of a person that wants to demonize the idea of whiteness, period. If I want to demonize CRT, I'm going to, one, make sure no one ever finds out what whiteness actually means. And two,
yeah, that's true,
use that ignorance towards whiteness to claim that I'm being attacked, or the white race is being attacked by, arguably an entire part of academia. And if you're being attacked by academics, you're being attacked by the elite. If you're being attacked by the elite, you have to stand against the elite because they're the elite and you're not.
Thanks for coming on and just like sharing your knowledge and expertise. And you've got a award-winning podcast voice, so I think that's great too.
All right. Thank you.
Everyone follow at Dialogue Always on Twitter. And are you still? I know you used to do YouTube. Are you still doing YouTube?
Not right now, but maybe eventually I'll start back up again if I ever get time.
All right, man. All right. Thank you, Losar, for coming on the L9AD and conversing. Thank you.
Catch you later.